Today we're going to go over squat technique and how to make your squat more effective with less low back pain. So be sure to save this video. All we're going to do is I'm going to be using a light bar today, but if you're using a rack, you need to work on your shoulder and wrist mobility so that when you come underneath the rack, you can actually stabilize your lats, your shoulders and everything and tuck them in nice. If you're like this or you're like this and it's just not stable, it's going to cause more back pain and potentially you can hurt yourself, okay? So with this bar here, I'm gonna put it on my shoulders. We're gonna work on some technique. But before I get into that squat and a loaded bar technique, we're gonna start looking at, well, how does my squat actually look? So I'm gonna roll this forward a bit here. Now, there's a simple way to find out how you should squat. Now, there's nothing wrong with doing a close squat, which is where you have your knees kind of going straight out like this, okay? Or if you turn your feet out slightly so that you have a little bit more hip mobility and you can kind of, point to the different corners of the room a little bit, and you can play around with your foot position. Now, one thing I like to tell my clients is this, is if you're jumping back and forth, okay, and you were gonna jump up, how would you land? Most people don't land like this. They land slightly outside of that, like outside of their hip. And then that way is gonna be more of a natural squat position for you. Everybody's hips are a little bit different. So for me, it's not comfortable for me to do this and get this low. I feel like there's a little bit more impingement in there in my joint socket. So I like to go a little bit wider, not wide, but a little bit wider, toes slightly pointed out, 35 degrees maybe, and then I like to come down. And this feels natural to me. If I was just gonna, squat down on a toilet, that feels natural. I don't usually squat down on toilets like this. So therefore try that out. That is gonna be your squat technique. Now when it comes down to it and we're coming down, we wanna make sure that we're not falling forward too much when performing our squats. When we sit on a toilet, we kind of sit back like this. So we don't really go like this when we're on a toilet. So we want to imagine that we're sitting in a chair or a toilet. So coming back like this. Now when we have a bar, we'll be slightly like this. Now as you can see, this is why mobility in our shoulders is so important. So working on this first before loading up the bar will allow you to have a better squat with less injury. Here's what we look like with a bar. So this bar is a little short. Bar placement's important. I have a video about this later on. So I'm coming in here, got my squat position, my shoulders are pulled back. Now my ribs aren't flared out like this, because then, well, that what we call the stripper squat, where we're kind of like sticking our butt out and we're leaning forward. That's a lot of tension on that low back, and if you don't have a strong low back, it can cause injury. So I'm bracing as I'm flexing my ribs, keeping my spine in line, and I'm coming down like this. As you can see here, I'm not restricting all this weight here. Nice equal displacement, okay? So, and I'm keeping my spine and my core braced during this. So I'm gonna go a side view now, okay? So turning sideways, okay? Got my setup here, and I'm gonna come down. And as you can see, I'm not pushing my butt out first and then falling forward, moving that bar path from being on top of my joints, being nice and stable in line, to being forward on my joints and me hurting myself. So bars here, okay? And then there's my butt's slightly out, but I'm not like doing this. So, because that's how I would sit, sitting down, right there. And that whole time I'm keeping my core braced.